27 листопада.
It's November 27. Ukraine Media Center continues its operation. My name is Svetlana Shaparenko. Now we will discuss the update of approach to the capacity assessment to strengthen local development. And joining us in the studio is Oleksii Riabykin, Deputy Minister for Development of Communities and Territories of Ukraine, Yuriy Kotok, Deputy Director of the Department, Head of the Territorial Organization and Administrative and Territorial Governance Division, Yevhen Mashyna, Deputy Director of the Recovery for AAI project at Alinea International, and Oleksandr Solontai, Chairman of the Board and Chair of the Steering Committee, Agency for Recovery and Development. Good afternoon, gentlemen. So, Mr. Oleksii, can you please tell us a little bit more about the idea of development of this procedure and the dashboard that it will be accompanied with, those who will accompany the assessment of communities assessment, and why is it even reviewed now? Well, basically, the idea did not just pop up. In fact, the decentralization reform has been implemented for a number of years. We all know that it's one of the most successful reforms in Ukraine. It's been on for 14 years. It's been based on the concepts of reformation of the territorial authorities, and there is such a document called the methodology of shaping the capable communities. Within a year, we've been seeing that there are such issues coming up that we should review the borders of the communities to divide some communities, to unite others, and as a response to all those questions that were emerging and to calm down all of the people, all of the communities, we've suggested to approach it from a different side. Since the methodology of assessment of the community's capacity is abstract and generalized, we decided to approach some specific criteria, again based on the data, because the data is the foundation for shaping any policy, and basically in cooperation with our Canadian partners, currently represented by Mr. Yevhen Mashyna here with the experts, with the relevant department of the multi-level government, within the Ministry of Communities and Development of Communities and Territories. We're going to present certain approaches to populate the dashboard with the data that will allow us to assess the capacity of the communities. Why aren't we talking about the borders of the communities? Because the communities, in a way they look now, they emerged in 2020. 90% of the communities emerged after the local elections, and the local governments were elected in the newly shaped communities. At the same time, the COVID pandemic has started, and after the COVID pandemic started receding, the full-scale invasion has started, and the communities didn't have an opportunity to fully, so to say, exercise their potential. So now we're not talking about the changes of the borders of the territorial communities, but at the same time we're discussing the change or assessment of capacity. It's not about rating. We don't want to rate anybody from first to the last place. No, in no way. What we're talking about is for the state to be able to target specific approaches, to formulate policies, to provide support tools to those communities who are still below that capacity level, in order for them to increase that capacity after some time. And basically, it all falls within the context of what complies with the requirements of the Section 22 of the regional policy, because when it comes to implementation of the targeted territory-oriented approach for provision of resources, internationally provided resources to some territories, we have to understand the condition of those territories, and using those tools we will be able to clearly understand the condition of the community. What is their financial capacity? What is their demographic circumstances, what is the condition of their economy, what are the stimuli for development, and what are the challenges for development over there. That's incredibly important during the war, because we see that misproportion of the regional development is increasing, and there is an intense migration of people inside the country and unfortunately migration abroad. There is an intense process of relocation of companies from safe territories from unsafe territories to those safer ones. So some are the recipients of opportunities and others are losing those opportunities. So thanks to this tool, with the use of this tool, we will be able to see the full picture. What is the condition of the communities in different sections? Why? In order to help the communities in a targeted manner to increase their capacity. What comes next? Next comes the change of the methodology of shaping the capable communities, because it's supposed to be having clear approaches, and only after some time, well, most obviously it's going to take years, we'll be able to see the ways this or that territory is developing. And after we look for the reasons, we identify the reasons, we will be able to talk about the possible change of the communities' borders. But again, it should be based on data, not because someone just imagines, someone wants someone, or does something else. We have to rely upon the clear data. Oh, there's another thing I wanted to mention. We have to arrange the activity in this sector and to reduce the opportunities for manipulation. What do I mean by that? I see that in many regions there are systems or dashboards emerging that kind of rate the communities, evaluating or assessing the state of the communities. But in fact, that will be our response to their request, and that the approach to the assessment of the capacity will be standardized. So there will be a set of criteria in operation that will be aimed at assessing this or that indicator. So there will be no need to create a dashboard in Kyiv or Lviv region. It will all be standardized in one system that everyone will be able to use, and the people should use to what should know, like to what extent is their community capable? What does the community do to solve the issues arising? What does the state authority do? And the assessment of capacity of territorial communities is the part of the policy of territory-oriented approach of our ministry, because last week the government approved quite an important decree, which means that shortly we are going to get clearly identified territories of reconstruction, forest territories, territories of man-made disaster, regional poles of growth. They are already historically shaped, but they are not reflected in legislation. Again, based on the system of capacity assessment, the state will pick the set of tools in a targeted manner to support specific communities, specific people residing on this or that territory. I think that my colleagues will be able to significantly complement what I've said. I think that there is a beautiful presentation ahead, and I really want to thank you for your attention, and I'm open to any and all of your questions. Thank you, Mr. Oleksii. Mr. Yuriy, first of all, I would like to ask you about the key principles. This updated approach to assessment will be based upon those principles, those criteria that it's based upon. Can you please tell us about them? Well, thank you for your question, but in order to explain it in full, I think we should proceed to the presentation in which we will be able to explain the reasons to such an approach. It was already mentioned that our communities are currently based on the methodology that was approved by the Cabinet of Ministers back in back in year 20, before the elections that have taken place in October that year. So this methodology contains criteria based on which the communities were shaped. Well, again, we divide them into basic and additional ones. Those criteria were not taken into account as the communities were being assessed, and there was no actually such assessment. But even those criteria approved in the existing methodology, they are generalized and they don't allow us to clearly understand the clear necessity of the communities. They don't take into account some specifics which are important for us, the capacity of the local governments, some economic aspects of their development, territorial specifics, and what's even most important, the consequences of the full-scale invasion. Our approach, well, why did we decide to update this approach and to it was done to take into account all of the necessary aspects of the development of the communities, and also so that the communities understand the vectors of their development and the weak links in this process. That's why our new approach is based on two pillars. Is based on verified data, and unlike the existing methodology, we plan to exercise monitoring of the assessment of territorial communities based on their categories. We don't mix all of the communities together for the sake of rating. We evaluate different aspects of development of rural and municipal communities. Generally, we've come up with 24 criteria of assessment. That's not a final list. That's the list of criteria that we were able to draw structured data from. They are grouped by their characteristics. You can see human potential, humanitarian potential, social capacity, and governance capacity. It all reflects the actual level of capacity. Now you have an opportunity to get yourself familiarized with their, so to say, assessment based on those 28 criteria. This assessment is not final. It's based on the criteria that were shaped for the time being. Talking in more detail, now we have an opportunity to get ourselves familiarized with the assessment of potential of communities in terms of human resources. What criteria are included in this group? Again, this list is not comprehensive. As you can see, this group of criteria is characterizing the availability of human resources and the possibility of recreation of human resources. Whom does the community exist for, and in fact, whom is it going to exist in future? Now there is a visualization of assessment based of humanitarian and economic potential criteria. This group of criteria for us reflects the economic and resource base of the development of the communities and the way the communities can develop in future using the available resources. Currently, in this group of criteria, it lists 8 different criteria, but there is a potential for growth because we are currently plan to work more intensely with the associations of local governments and with the central government to get more data, to expand this group of criteria and to expand the base for assessment. Another visualization is institutional capacity. This group of criteria, in fact, is reflecting how the local governments of the territorial communities are capable to exercise the functions vested in them. This group of criteria, in our opinion, is the most prone to expansion. We have the vision of new criteria. Those are the criteria related to electronic democracy and the ability of the local governments to engage the citizens for shaping of local policies. So in my opinion, this group of criteria will be expanded in future. And the third group of criteria, financial capability. Currently, you're seeing it visualization. It reflects certain trends based on the official data of development of this or that community. Currently, this group lists 7 criteria, and they reflect the ability of the community to shape their financial resources for exercising their authority and to use it. In this slide, the spectators can scan the QR code, which will lead them to the dashboard where all those assessments are reflected by this or that criteria. In this dashboard, you can filter out the communities by different indicators. So I think the interested persons will find it quite easy to get themselves familiarized with the ratings. So hopefully I was able to explain our approaches to the assessment of the territorial communities in deeper detail. Thank you, Mr. Yuriy. Mr. Oleksandr, can you please tell us about the logic of those criteria? We've already seen there are 4 groups, and the number of criteria is going to be expanded in every single group based on the experience. But currently, how were they shaped, and what are the most important indicators that will be taken into account for creation of these dashboards? Thank you. As Oleksii and Yuriy have already mentioned, we have this experience that we gained within the framework of decentralization reform. It was already used as the reform was implemented. It was still taken into account, but the first base is to verify what was laid as a legal foundation during the reform of decentralization, or was adopted in legislation but was never applied in real life. So that's the first component that we need to understand why specifically this set of criteria. Another part of understanding is understanding of words. What is territorial community? We understand that territory means some areas, some square meters or square kilometers, a number of settlements, villages, or towns. And basically here we will need to collect data, systematize them. And unfortunately, currently, not all of the digital systems existing in the state provide us with an opportunity to respond to this territorial challenge. And then comes word community. You know, we always use the word community even without the word territorial. And there are 2 contexts of this word community, and they were all taken into account. There is a context related to the fact that it's a local authority, local governance, a leader of the community. It's always about the people who represent this territory, this community, this area. It's about reconstruction, like it's about the rebirth of this tradition to make decisions in the regions. But there is another aspect, and Ukrainian language is given a tip of. Community is a community of people. It's about the people who are capable of doing something, and what they're capable of understanding. We have to look through the human resources and to look at the social and economic situation, because it will allow us to see more data, more complete data about the state of affairs in the community. And hence we come up with those 4 groups of criteria that disclose the community as the community of people residing in one territory. It's a human-centric approach that is supposed to be right, not only from the perspective of Euro integration, but even from the perspective of the logic. Why do we need decentralization? To put a human being, to put a person, a citizen in the middle, to understand that the community is not a local government. A lot of people, they create, they do things, they show resilience, they defend the territory, they develop their territory even without coordination with the local government. They can join government, or they may leave the government, they may cooperate or not. So human resources, they demonstrate what's going on with the people in this specific territory. Social economic criteria, they demonstrate what's going on with the social economic development, with the services sector, everything that's related to the lives of the people residing in that territory. That's when it comes to the development of local government. It's not about Section 22, about European Union and Euro integration. It's about the future efficiency of this Euro integration, because the capable institutions of the local governments are an answer to the question, how much financial profit are we getting from any specific village and town within the framework of Euro integration. And about finance, the data is the most developed, and this block is gravitating towards this assessment. There's a lot of data thanks to the great job done in the area of public finance, thanks to electronic systems that are implemented. We know a lot about public finance, and for example, we don't know a lot about the finance of economy, the finance of the people. We know about those aspects less. So it's obvious that the criteria that we can easily evaluate, they are red in the map of Ukraine, but tomorrow, after the consultations, after the improvement, after adding additional criteria, in my opinion, this component will become way less. I mean, it's weight, but it will be still there because it's about the public assessment of finance of the community, what the community wills, and it's an answer to the question who paid how much taxes and stuff. There's, such a balance. On one hand, we'll see those criteria growing, and others criteria will also always be important because financial decentralization is a part of general decentralization as a foundation of this process. And another important moment is that these criteria and data that are being collected, I will continue what Yuriy started saying, that data is about to be verified and updated. And this is what Oleksii was saying, that the assessment will be made based on the dynamic of changes. So for us to understand that, okay, currently this community has a lot of capacity programs in different sectors, but does it even work on overcoming those obstacles? We can only understand it if we keep track of the changes, like once a year, once in half a year, we can check and see the dynamics. Okay, the year 25, 26, 27, 28, and then we will be answer the question Oleksii is asking, whether the necessary policy is being exercised to build the capacity of this or this community. If it is, then who does it? Is it done on the regional level? Is it done by the community itself? Do they get international donors, or is it the central level who helps them build capacity? And we will be able to see where the capacity is weak and who doesn't do a thing there, because there are criteria and they will answer to all of our questions. If it's done, then by whom? Is it sufficient? And okay, if it has a weak capacity now, but the dynamic of efforts of the community and the state policy clearly demonstrates that after the years pass, the people will build this capacity and those towns and villages will become stronger. That will relieve all of the questions whether any revision or redistribution is necessary, because we will have a clear program of activities, course of actions. So there should be no just a beautiful picture, but it should be informative about the ability to track the trends and ability to understand which government has to do something to make sure to increase this capacity. So the data serves as a call for action, so we can tie all this system together with the strategic planning. Thank you, Mr. Oleksandr. Mr. Yevhen, can you please tell us a little bit more about the dashboards? What are the opportunities provided by them? How to track the data in dynamics, and for whom they can be interesting and important? Well, thank you for your question. In fact, as we were making this dashboard, we were approaching it with such a logic that everyone should be able to check flexibly how the situation is changing, and based on that data, we would be able to check through every community to understand the indicators, their meaning, and as long as is the first iteration of this dashboard, further on we are going to continue populating it with the data, and we will continue working on verification of that data, because what we were facing in preparation of this dashboard, as we were collecting data, there was a lot of question regarding the validity of the data and I hope that we were able to achieve equality level with our colleagues that reflects the adequate situation and the actual current condition. And if you check this dashboard, you will be able to see information by criteria, and it's really an interactive tool that allows us to make decisions where the help is most necessary, where to focus the efforts of the state. A couple of words, why did we decide to support this initiative? Because our project has been working with the national level capacity for a long while, and starting from the year 2024, we started cooperation with the Ministry of Development. And now we have another type of activity at the ministry level where we work with this strategic planning framework, and there is a number of pilot communities with whom we developed the strategic documents. And what we were able to see, as long as it was a difficult sector, a new sector for us, as we started approaching the new communities, we started asking them whether they have any strategic documents, and based on those documents, what are the results within the latest period? What have you been able to achieve within the framework of this or that document? And what we've realized, that a lot of work was done to develop those documents, but many communities just don't have sufficient capacity to implement them. So for us, as novices in this field, it's important to check the capacity as a cornerstone of how community plans their activities and implements all those initiatives. Which resources do they have for that? Not only financial resources, but also human resources. We understand that now, as a result of the full-scale invasion, it's going to become a huge challenge, a demographic one, the availability of specialists, the people who can make changes in the regions. And I would like to thank our colleagues from the Ministry of Development, and I want to say that we urge everybody to comment, to enter the website, to test the system. And in my turn, I would like to thank our Canadian partners, represented by Mr. Yevhen Mashyna, and I want to say that with this briefing we start a broad discussion of the dashboard, which is aiming to assess the community's capacity. That's not a finally approved method. Currently we are in the process of search, and for example, may I ask you to put the presentation on the screen? Yeah, I'm asking the technical team to bring the presentation to the screen so we understand, yeah, where it was all in red. For financial indicators. Yeah, so you see, the war is taking place all over Ukraine. Unfortunately, there are temporarily occupied territories and there are frontline communities. Like red is bad. Red is bad, and the financial capacity in those communities is bad. But let's take a look at this map. Based on the available data, the financial capacity is bad there where the economy and the people were relocated. So it's a huge question for us. It means that we have to work more carefully on this issue, because we realized that those territories that were the most affected are the territories in the frontline communities. Those are the territories or the regions where the active combat operations are taking place. There are 10 such territories: Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv, Luhansk, Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, Mykolaiv, Odessa, Kherson regions. All of those territories are at the same time under fire, but we can see that the financial capacity in those territories is fine. So we need more opinions. For us, it's important to drive this discussion on a professional level, based on the data, based on modeling the situation, based on specific projects. We're starting it. Again, after a broad public discussion, it will be reflected in the regulations and only then used as a source for shaping of policies and managerial solutions. So with this briefing, we're starting a broad public discussion. Thank you, Mr. Oleksii. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions to our guests? If you have, please raise your hands. You will get the microphone and you will be able to ask a question. Good afternoon, Yaroslav Gladko, Суспільне мовлення. First of all, I would like to thank you. That's really an important thing. Well, I think that it should be updated in view of the situation, that came up after this methodology was adopted in 2015. Let me be brave enough to suggest to you to add the concept of the community's resilience. It's important, and as we understand, well, resilience and sustainability is what we will need now and after the war, right by the side of the financial potential, humanitarian and economic potential to assess sustainability of the communities. We could come up with a couple of criteria and I think it may better demonstrate the situation existing for the time being. And I would also like to ask you, Mr. Oleksii, a question. Which ministries do you plan to get involved so they can help you prepare a quality document, submitting their proposals? Well, for what we understand, it's going to be a decree of the Cabinet of Ministers or something like that. Well, thank you for your question. In fact, there's a lot of ministries already involved: the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Social Policy, Unity and Family, the Ministry of Interior, because we draw some migration data from them, the Ministry of Digital Transformation. So, in fact, all of the ministries are already either already involved or about to get involved in the context of data collection and processing of suggestions. But it's not only about the ministries. I would also like to hear the opinion of the local authorities and regional authorities, local executive authorities. I would like to hear the opinion of other experts, because in fact that's our suggestion, which definitely requires broader public discussion. I would like to hear out to the communities and all in all to the people, because the final recipient of those services are the people. We all live in the communities, and such approaches will directly influence our future in the communities. That's why, honestly, in such situations, I keep saying that I have my own mercantile interest. I want to drive over the good roads. I want to live in the good communities, get quality services. That's why we're trying to shape a good policy with our policies, because the consequences of good policies are good services. So this is my approach. There's going to be another broad discussion. We're not hurrying anywhere, but again, we want to switch this discussion to the professional space, so to say. And in the same way, those who want to live in a comfortable communities, where can they find this dashboard? It can be found in the website of Ministry of Development. Well, here's the QR code. For what I understand, the link to this dashboard will be posted in our website. And after we work on our vision, after we finalize our vision, there will be the draft regulation for identification of this assessment. Well, thank you. Let me remind you, we were discussing the matter of community capacity assessment, and we will continue at 1400. We will talk about the barrier-free space and the ways that technologies help us to expand this barrier-free space. Thank you. Stay tuned.